Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits. Joining me today is Grace Anna Douglas to talk about your marketing strategy. Grace, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, as we begin, I would love to learn your superhero origin story. That is to say, how did you get started working with nonprofits?
Yeah, I love that. So I actually, from a very young age, knew I wanted to work in the nonprofit space. I was always volunteering with soup kitchens. I did a lot of Habitat for Humanity trips in middle and high school, down to West Virginia to work on houses, just in neighborhoods down there. And I just knew I wanted to have a career that helped people. That is what I knew. I didn't know exactly where I was going to end up or how I was going to make that happen, but that is what I went into college knowing I wanted to do. I didn't know anyone who worked in the nonprofit world outside of my volunteering exercises, of course. But my parents were kind of like, how are you going to make a living doing that? That's something you need to figure out. So I went into college and got my marketing and public relations degree. So I went for business. But I made sure all of my internships in college were also at nonprofits. So I followed through all the way through college, really with the strong direction of making sure that I was going to end up somehow within the nonprofit sphere. And that is so I like to say I kind of fell into the marketing side of it. I truly love it now, but I did not go into school wanting to be a marketer. I just went into school wanting to work in the nonprofit world. So I was really lucky to be able to tie both of those together. And yeah, my first semester, senior year of college, I ended up at the Human Rights Foundation as a communications intern. And then right after graduation, I kind of pitched to them coming on as their first ever marketing hire. They had never had a marketing team before. And it kind of just went from there. I spent my first 4.5 years out of school at the Human Rights Foundation, really growing out that team. And forever grateful they took that leap of faith on me straight out of school. But yeah, I, from a very young age, knew this is what I wanted to do. And I'm just forever grateful that marketing kind of found me in a sense and let me do the work that I so desperately wanted to do as a young kid.
It's cute that I got the slight notation that your parents were like, you want to work with nonprofits, but how are you going to make a living? Kind of like
Yeah,
a starving artist
you
principle.
have bills to pay. Yeah.
Okay, and then catching us up on today. Today you have an organization called Graceful Media. Can you tell us just a bit more about what that does and what your
Yeah.
work is about?
Yeah, definitely. So after 4 years at the Human Rights Foundation, I left last fall and I created Graceful Media. Well, actually, Graceful Media came to life actually while I was still at HRF. And I was working with just people I met within the HRF community who maybe needed a little marketing support here and there. And I really dove in last November. And now I help small to medium nonprofits as well as purpose-driven professionals really narrow down their marketing strategy, right? I think a lot of nonprofits struggle with, well, of course, and I don't think this, I know a lot of nonprofits struggle with funding, and marketing is not always the top of that list when it comes to budgetary needs. It kind of gets pushed to the side sometimes, not really spoken about within the space as much. People think of fundraising and they think that's all they need to do, and they don't really think of more of the brand awareness or getting your name out there type of marketing that I focus on. So it can be pushed to the side. So that's kind of the area that there was a hole there that I've saw through my time at HRF, and definitely it was very visible of a hole when I joined HRF, and I was able to grow that out, and the amazing team there now continues to fill that hole for HRF. But I work to fill that hole for other nonprofits now as well, because there's so many out there that either just are low staff, low budget, whatever it might be, just don't have the time, energy to really focus on marketing. So I come in as a strategic partner, however you might see that working out at your organization, and I help you really build out what you might need, right? It can be anything from social to paid media to podcasts to event advertising to donor events, whatever it might be, we can work through it together. And I think that leads to, you might ask me this in the future down the interview here, but I think a lot of nonprofits think they need to be everywhere all at once. And I really help you find exactly where you should be, because not every nonprofit needs to be on every platform. And I see that a lot of nonprofits are spreading themselves too thin. So I come in and really help make that strategic choice of where you should show up and how you should show up within those platforms.
There's a lot we can talk about, of course, when it comes to marketing. The angle we're trying to achieve here today is the starting point, right? Let's imagine an early nonprofit. They don't quite have a fundraising, well, they have a fundraising strategy, but they don't have a marketing strategy. So I'm curious to know, like, from based on your experience, like at one moment do nonprofits start realizing, hey, wait a minute, maybe we should start looking at increasing our marketing? Like, is there symptoms of a problem that they're trying to solve for that might be solved by brand awareness or other marketing strategies?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so far that straight fundraising can take you, right? If you're not getting your name out there, telling your story, helping the world understand the mission that you're trying to put forward, fundraising will only go so far. And fundraising is great if you have a set, I mean, you have to do fundraising, right? Every nonprofit should do fundraising, of course. But there's only so many donors on your register, and there's only so much. So even if your fundraising team is reaching out to new donors, that can qualify as a little bit of outreach and marketing. However, getting brand awareness, putting your name out there, pulling in community members that might never have heard about your organization or really don't ever think about human rights or nonprofit work at all. Those are the people we're targeting. There's so many people out there who want to help but don't know how. And that's really what marketing can do. It can get your mission out there in a way and tell that story in a way that pulls in people who might have never thought about it before, right? So if I've worked in the human rights space, I've worked for an organization bring humanitarian aid to the front lines in Ukraine, right? And that war has been going on for quite a few years now. So why should we care about it? So I help them tell not only their donors, not only their subscribers through newsletters or social, whatever it might be, why they should continue supporting, but also creating those media strategies or social or paid strategies, whatever it might be on that end, to then reach more people who would never have known that they are doing the work that they're doing. So those are really the two bubbles. I think so many nonprofits are stuck in the current subscriber bubble and they rely so heavily on who they already have within their sphere, within their community. And that's great. And obviously marketing includes speaking to those people as well. But there's so many people out there and it's such a missed opportunity if a nonprofit isn't speaking to a different crowd every time you do a campaign as well. If you're not speaking to both of those circles, then you're missing a huge demographic and a huge fundraising opportunity. At the end of the day, in the nonprofit world, it definitely all comes back to fundraising, but there's so many ways to get there. And that's what's missing from the nonprofit space the most.
So if an organization, for example, is focusing heavily on fundraising, but they're not really doing much marketing, your position is you can probably get even more fundraising if you do marketing correctly, right? It's the marketing is a kind of the top of the funnel activities to allow you to get more fundraising. And there's a whole bunch of missed opportunity that you're not probably tapping into because you're not doing fundraising. Is that kind of like your sales pitch for how or why would I even need marketing to begin with? Because if an organization, for example, is doing fairly well on the fundraising side, that might be a harder sell for them. But if you're saying, well, whatever you are today, we can probably get you to X times more if you do proper marketing. I mean, obviously that's an easier thing to sell. So I'm just curious to know how
Yeah.
how do you not convince that they need marketing? But would you say that all nonprofits need marketing? Because no matter what you're at, you're always going to get better and be able to get stronger and larger fundraising if you do it? Or is there another angle that you attack it from?
Yeah, I think all nonprofits need marketing for sure. I think it's an interesting question because a lot of nonprofits out there run without marketing, quote unquote, just fine. And they don't realize that they're missing this opportunity to get more fundraising or get more money in the door or butts in the seat if they're running an event or whatever it might be, or eyes on their work, right? It doesn't have to be fundraising specific. It could be you're putting a white paper out there and you're just posting it on your website and throwing it up on Twitter saying, hey, our legal department just wrote this amazing white paper, read here, right? And that's it. You just spent the past 8 months working on this white paper, and now maybe 3 people click on your Twitter post and read it, right? Whereas if you're doing marketing for that, you could split that white paper into 10, 20, 30 different social posts, learn about this, read about this. It's all about breaking it up into digestible content. And I think that funnels, yes, the end of the line funnels, everyone should be funneled towards fundraising at some point, but not every marketing strategy has to have a goal of fundraising, if that makes sense. Let me know if I'm not making sense. But so I mean, for example, I did this tons of times when working at the Human Rights Foundation, right? Like you're working and with the organization in Ukraine as well. I mean, they're doing amazing work, but not everyone understands the nuances of it. Not everyone understands the big legal jargon that you're throwing out there in your white papers. Not everyone wants to read that long form. So being able to cut that up into smaller, digestible pieces is really what marketing does. And you're breaking it up not only for social, it could be, let's say we want to do a billboard campaign with one strong line, right? Really grabbing attention. I live right by New York City, so let's use Times Square for an example. Really strong Times Square billboard. And that is a straight awareness campaign, right? But all those people might never have heard of your organization before. It might not lead to a donation in the moment. It might not. But it could lead to them Googling the topic, right? And then you pop up because you're doing enough marketing where your website is high enough in that search engine to bring you up in that conversation in the first place. So I think marketing is very full circle. It always comes back to marketing. Everything you put out into the world should be digestible for people who have no idea what you're talking about. And that is really what nonprofits, I think a lot of nonprofits are missing. And some, I can't say all of them because some of them do this amazingly well. Amazingly well. But a lot of smaller nonprofits, this is what they struggle with. And I think there's so many opportunities to get your mission out there in front of more people that they're just missing. And it makes me sad that they're not getting their voice in front of more people, when it could just be as simple as, again, breaking down that white paper that you're putting out into 20 digestible LinkedIn posts, whatever it might be. There's so many small tactics that nonprofits can use that a lot of them aren't taking advantage of.
Speaking of Times Square, I think it was this year where there was a very famous advertisement that was written very simply. It's a black text on white background, says in all lowercase, "Hi, I'm Roy. I'm 21. This was very expensive. Please buy my thing." And then the website name. And apparently it went viral. Like it was just,
I love that.
It's awesome. It's very genuine, down to earth. And I'm sure it did really well. I don't have any numbers that quantify that, but it went viral. Just the advertisement of it went viral. So that's one way to work on it. Okay, so it sounds super clear. No matter what kind of nonprofit you are, if you're not doing marketing, you're missing out, so to speak. So how do you start? All right, an organization realizes, okay, we're not doing enough marketing or no marketing at all. What are typically the first steps to start building an effective marketing strategy?
Yeah, really understanding where your storytelling will meet your community the most, right? Who do you want to reach? That is step one. Understanding, and if let's say you're building a team from scratch, let's start before you even hire anybody. We're not hiring anyone yet. We're just meeting with C-suite, meeting with the board, and understanding who we want to reach, right? That's it, bottom line. And then step two is probably hiring someone or a consultant or someone of that nature to really look at it from a marketing viewpoint. They go, oh, this is who you want to reach. This is how we build it out. Or these are the platforms that you want to be on. Circling back to something I said before, not every nonprofit needs to be on every platform. I see that all the time where nonprofits are posting the same exact thing on 5 different social platforms. That is not how you use social media. You should be tailored for the platform, and you don't have to be everywhere, right? Find the 2 or 3 platforms max that you think your team can do incredible impact on, right? Find where your people are. If you are a nonprofit that focuses on Gen Z, you probably want to be on TikTok and Instagram, right? Probably less on Facebook and Twitter. There's ways to quantify exactly which platform you should be on. Does your audience like long form? Then maybe you think about LinkedIn or a newsletter or a blog. So really breaking down how you want to reach your audience through what mediums you think will reach your audience the best is pretty high on the list of things to do. And then adapts into adding to your team, right? If you think social media, I want to go hard on social media, then you probably hire a social media person or a marketing person that has that social media experience. If you think that most of your audience are, you have a huge email subscriber list and you want to hammer down and growing that subscriber list, then you hire someone with email marketing experience, or again, a consultant who can do all this, something like that. So it's really figuring out, because you don't want to waste your time. I feel like so many nonprofits, we are all running on borrowed time. And especially with everything going on in the US, the funding is low. There's no chance to just sit there and contemplate every single day which platform I should put my stuff out on, right? You want to do this full audit beforehand. And obviously, every 6 months, you should be redoing this audit, making sure these platforms that you're on are still working for you and your mission and your platform and your community. Does your community like newsletters? Test it out. Just try it out. Do 6 months of newsletters. Then send out a little questionnaire. Hey, are you enjoying this newsletter? Would you rather see it in short form? Would you rather see it in long form? There's nothing wrong with asking your community what they want to see as well. So I think it's really starting from scratch. It's a lot of asking. It's a lot of testing. It's a lot of trying things out and seeing what sticks, what works, what doesn't. And then it's really building a team from there, right? If you're that's if you want to build out a team. But I think a lot of nonprofits say like, okay, we're not doing any marketing. Let's just do social on every single platform. And that is really where I see them fall into this trap of driving themselves in circles and wearing each other out. And then you have people who are burnt out and tired, and you don't really have any impact that came back from all those efforts that you put in. So it's really about being strategic, understanding you don't have to be everywhere all at once, being strategic about what platforms you do choose to show up on and how you show up on each platform, testing, analyzing your analytics that come back, and then really building off all of that from there.
I've heard before too that it's better to be on, one or two, maybe three platforms and do those well rather than trying to be on every single platform and not do it so well, because we do have limited resources. Exactly. So better to find, like you said, find your people, find where they hang out, and then address them. Because each platform, one of the main reasons why you wouldn't want to do that for across multiple platforms is each one has a very specific way of it has a different algorithm. Like to your point, if you want long form, LinkedIn is your best choice, or reverse. If you go on LinkedIn, long form is your best choice. If you go on TikTok, short videos are your best choice. So you can't, or it's more difficult to spread out all your people because there are different mechanisms and ways of connecting with people on different platforms. So better to go smaller than larger.
Exactly. Yep. Finding where your audience can best understand what you're saying back, and vice versa, right? You want to hear from your audience as well. So where are you going to be able to interact with your audience the most is also important.
Right. That's the benefit of going social, right? Is that the idea is it's now an interaction, not just a broadcasting type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, Alex here. I want to take a brief moment and thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode so far, please consider sharing it with someone who would also benefit from its insights. It's these kinds of referrals that really help the show grow. You can also show your support by making a small donation. I don't do corporate sponsorships or product placements, so I rely on your support to keep the show going. You can visit my website, agentsofnonprofit.com, and click Support Us in the top menu. Thank you kindly. So that's kind of social. You talked earlier about paid advertisement, podcasts, and events. Where is it also just trying to find your people? Like, I understood that you first find your people, then you find out where they are. And social is one of those channels. Paid advertisement, that would be another one. Is it a matter of just trying it and experimenting to see if paid advertising works? Or you're going toward paid advertising because that's where certain people are and that's the best way to reach them?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into paid advertising. I've done a lot of out-of-home campaigns in different cities, New York, Oslo, Taipei, all for human rights conferences. And it's really understanding, again, the audience. And I've actually never been to Taipei, but I've run a lot of advertising campaigns there. And that one's very interesting, right? Because I think a cool story, I'll share a story really quick. We ran an advertisement in Oslo, Norway. And Oslo, Norway they're very democratic, and there's a lot of hope, and they have a really great outlook on life, and it's just they're very happy people. So our advertisement could be a little bit more hopeful, right? A little bit more community driven. And that was really easy to play on there. And it spoke very well to the community. And we then brought the advertisements to Taiwan. And I think just budget constraints and a lot of things limited us from kind of changing the wording. We obviously translated, but we didn't change much of what the advertisement said. And it just didn't perform as well. Obviously, Taiwan is a very different political landscape than Norway, and we didn't really play onto the fact anything about their relationship with China and everything going on there. So it fell flat, right? And we had to go back and be like, okay, why didn't that perform well there? Well, the channels are different, right? Maybe the out of home landscape is very different. The paid ads in media is very different. The podcast landscape is very different. The political landscape is very different. People there have a very different outlook on the world, right, than the people in Norway or the people in New York. And being able to translate the mission in a way that translated to their needs in that moment was super important. And being able to figure out, again, where your audience is, meeting them where they're at, being able to adapt what you want to teach or what you want them to learn, or in that case was filling seats at a conference. You want them to buy a ticket to come to this human rights conference. Being able to translate that to their daily life is super important. And yes, it's a lot of testing, but I don't want to say you have to spend money to test. I mean, there's definitely plenty of ways out there that you can figure out, okay, I want to target college students in Taipei. How do I get in touch with them, right? You can contact student newspapers or local young influencers and have them talk about it. Or we did bus ads just around college campuses and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can go when it comes to paid media. But again, it's really about telling your story, being able to share that story with the community in a way that connects with them one-on-one. It's not just, and I think that example that I gave was a great example of, you can't just plaster the same thing in different industries for different communities. And that happens in the US as well, right? People in New York have a very different outlook of life for the world than people in, let's say, I don't know, West Virginia or Texas or even California. We all have different experiences, and being able to figure out where everyone lives within this digital landscape is the most important. So definitely I don't want to be on here and say spend money just to do testing. There's definitely ways to figure that out. And you have to talk with whatever consulting agency or whoever you might be going through to figure that out. They can definitely help you with that and figure out the best areas, location, people to talk to, depending on what your goals are. And of course, what your advertising is. Are your goals fundraising? Are you, again, putting butts in seats? Or is it just awareness? So I think there's a lot of different options there that you can go. And it is very interesting once you dive into it. It's a lot of things that most people never think about. And you're really diving into the nuances of how people in that region think, right? And how they're going about their day, and how you can speak to them and speak to their day-to-day routine in a way that flows naturally. Falls under the media tunnel for sure. Being able to get your teammates onto other people's podcasts, or just being able to prove that you're an expert in that area, right? Your team is an expert in authoritarian regimes or refugees or whatever it might be, whatever your nonprofit's focusing on, or humanitarian aid in Ukraine, whatever your expertise might be. That is really a great way to angle your team as someone who, okay, I'm running this podcast. I want someone to talk about this topic. I should go to that organization because I know they have 3 or 4 people who would be great for this episode. That is great to play into. And that is a very slow process, of course. It's a lot of relationship building, but the earlier nonprofit starts, the easier that becomes. So that's definitely something that I suggest for all marketing teams out there to definitely focus on creating a strategy on how to get your team on podcasts. Flipping it to an in-house podcast, I also think that's a great avenue to go. I think you have to understand the time commitment, of course. So I don't recommend creating a podcast out of the gate if you are a new nonprofit marketing team, because it's just a ton of work. The recording and the interviewing, I know Alex and I were just talking about this before we hit record, is we love the interviewing portion, but the editing and the marketing of that afterwards takes a lot of time. So if you don't have all the time in the world, I would suggest focusing on getting your team members on other podcasts. However, if you are a more established team and you think this is the direction you want to go, I do think in-house podcasts can be incredibly powerful. However you want to do that, either interviewing people in your community or just having team members banter back and forth, however you want to format that. And I think all of that can then be broken down into newsletter content. It can be broken down to LinkedIn blog content. It can be broken down into Instagram, TikTok, whatever platforms you're on. This goes back to the conversation from before. Again, you don't want to put it on every platform, but whatever platform you're on, there's a way to break down podcast content to fit that platform correctly. So let's say you do an entire 35-minute episode with an activist in your community. Amazing. Use that for the weekly newsletter. Use it for the week after that's newsletter. There's going to be so much content in there that it's going to be so easy to pull and break and move things around in a way that can fit many platforms, not just Spotify. And I think that is something that I've seen some nonprofits struggle with. They think they just put their podcast out there on Spotify and say, hey, go listen on socials. And that's kind of all they leave it at, but they're missing a huge opportunity. You already have that content filmed and recorded and edited. Use it everywhere and edit it for the specific platform that you're putting it out on. That's super important. I mean, if you want to edit the dimensions for Instagram, make sure it fits that correctly, because the dimensions for LinkedIn are very different. There's so many things you can do with podcast content that's just so much fun. But circling back to really, really quickly, because I do think it is important, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, we do want to get into the nonprofits podcasting space, and there's so many opportunities there. I would start with getting your team onto podcasts first, and then maybe move into creating your own. And I think creating your own can also help you get on other people's, right? You could also cross promote. So I invite Alex onto my podcast and I go on his, and vice versa. So there's different ways to build off that. But I would suggest starting with making your team the experts on your topic and getting them placed on other podcasts before taking a stab at creating your own podcast. But if you do go the full podcast creation route, please let me know how it goes. I'm super excited. I will listen. I do love nonprofit when you do a really strong podcast, it can do wonders for your donor base, your fundraising, everything in between.
I've learned that podcasting is very strong for a number of reasons. One is you really have an opportunity to communicate your personality.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, I know there are people listening to me who now know me better because of interviews like this, and that can really be impactful. It's a bit of a longer form, but tremendous feedback and trust building. I also agree with you in terms of being a guest first, because that allows you to start getting your toe wet, I guess, so to speak. The idea is that you start practicing, understanding there's a certain way of speaking, cadence, getting comfortable being in front of a microphone. If there's a video involved, that's also another hurdle to cross. So that kind of allows your team to start ramping up. And then if you do decide to start your own podcast, right, there are multiple formats. You can have the interview style like we have here, or you can do, in your own team. You could have a combination of both. You could be a solo person. Each one has its pros and cons. I like the interview style because this way I talk less, but also because, interview people, and you can offer people to be part of your show. And that's a great way to also introduce yourself as an organization to other organizations. So it's a less salesy approach to getting almost like a sales conversation, right? If I can invite, in my case, potential Salesforce clients who are in the nonprofit space, I can have a conversation with them, and then they I really enjoyed that conversation. How else can we work together? And that's a great foot in the door type scenario.
Going back to showing your personality, and this might be a question you're going to ask in the future, but jumping ahead really quick, I think it's so important for nonprofits to show your personality. That's so important. And when you said that, it really brought something to mind about using LinkedIn as well. And I think a lot of nonprofits kind of skip over LinkedIn as a possible fundraising funnel, but it's so important. And if you have, it's all being in the nonprofit space is really all about showing your storytelling skills and being able, as I've said multiple times so far, being able to communicate your mission, how it relates to other people's lives. So if you're showing the people behind the mission, being able to showcase that, hey, we're a team back here, we're real people working towards this, that people will be more likely to want to join. And I think using if you are a marketing director or nonprofit, you should 1,000% be on LinkedIn, sharing your journey, sharing what you're learning, sharing what your team is working on, whatever it might be. And that really, again, is a way to pull people in. And just like podcasting, you're showing your personality because that's so important. People want to invest in people, right? And that's why there's such a huge boom in influencer marketing in the for-profit world right now, is because people want to buy from people. And it's the same in the nonprofit space. People want to invest and want to support people. So if you're able to show that your mission is more than just written word on a website, that can go a long way. And podcasting and LinkedIn is just two great ways to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. So moving away from podcasting, because I could talk about that. Obviously, we could talk about that for a while. I'm curious to know, because you mentioned also earlier about, testing things out, trying paid advertisement. There's a certain cost sometimes to doing things, whether it's actual monetary cost or time. How do you measure success? Because marketing is not usually a direct, like you do X and then you make this much money. It's more of a filters through a bigger machine, so to speak. And then it might take, months or years before your marketing actually has a tangible impact. So I'm curious to know, how do you advise nonprofits of where to spend money and their time and resources and say, oh, look, because of we did this, there is a benefit, you can see it, therefore this works, keep on doing it. Or maybe we should pivot a little bit because this isn't quite working out as well as it should, and let's try a different channel or avenue or mechanism.
Yeah, I actually just posted something on my personal LinkedIn today about metrics. And because I think it's such an important conversation. There is kind of this thing like a metrics trap that people get stuck in. And I think you can say you're doing a campaign for awareness, but there should always be a second tier goal there. And that's really how I help my clients figure out exactly how things are working. And you can get stuck in saying, oh my God, I got 10,000 impressions on this one post. Amazing. That's a great number. You should feel really proud about that. And it can definitely make you excited for moving forward. But you shouldn't hinder everything on that, because 10,000 impressions could just mean, okay, maybe 10,000 people scrolled past, right? But you should really be figuring out, did they interact with your content, right? Did they go to your website? Did they subscribe to your newsletter? Did they donate $1? Did they do something very small? They don't have to do anything crazy, just little small tasks from your community is what makes all the difference. And those are the numbers you want to keep track of. Those are the numbers that really matter and that will add up to greater impact and greater donations or whatever might be down the line. But really understanding what your overall goal is from the start. Before you start a campaign, you shouldn't start a campaign without a goal, right? Your first conversation should be, what do we want to get out of this campaign? Is it email subscribers? Is it newsletter subscribers? Is it, I want 100 people to donate $1? Whatever it might be, really figuring out how to measure before you even start your campaign is definitely what I recommend to everyone. You shouldn't be at the end of a campaign and then being like, okay, cool. How do we see if this worked? Right? It's a conversation that you should have before even pressing go on anything, or before you even really come up with a budget, right? This is the first conversation you should be having about, what is the goal and how are we going to measure success for this campaign? And then everything is built on top of that.
So as a non-marketer, I imagine that there are some typical standard metrics for marketing. Maybe you could share a bit more what they are, or if a better use is if there's other non-traditional or more modern ways of doing metrics on determining success of a marketing campaign.
Yeah, I think, it all ties into what I was just saying, right? I think the board sees that you got 100,000 impressions on a campaign and they're like, you crushed it, right? A lot of people will be like, that's amazing. And then your manager will send you something and be like, great work, board's really happy with this. But I think there's a lot of people miss this question of, okay, that's amazing, but did anyone actually do anything? And that's really the metrics that I'm trying to hone down on right now is like, did they donate? Did they sign the petition you wanted them to sign? Did they show up to the event you were advertising? Did they share with someone else who could hear? Did they share your post? Did they share your content? Did they share your podcast link? What did they do to really interact with your community? Did they follow? Did they join your community? Did your campaign push them to action in some way? And again, that action can be so minuscule, but it's more powerful for them to take a step in your direction than just scroll past. And I think that is really where, and I saw this a lot in my past jobs as well, like in-house consulting, everything, everyone loves these large numbers, right? And that's great. I mean, if you want to tell your community they get 100,000 impressions on one post, that's incredible. But what does that actually do for your community? Is that 100,000 people deciding they want to volunteer with you? Probably not, right? So it's really about being honest with yourself about what the outcomes of the campaign is. I think when you start tracking what actually moves that needle towards your mission, that can close the gap between people who just saw it and the people who actually took action on it.
Hang on, I'm gonna jump in here for a second though, because
Yeah,
this is great when it's digital. Because you're right, you put an ad out there, you can see the clicks,
yeah,
you can see you have UTM codes and all that kind of good stuff to track things.
yeah.
Let's go for the example of the bus billboard, right?
Okay, yeah,
And I mean, you put it out there, I don't know, every day for a week. I mean, imagine that not everybody's going to see it the minute they see it. They're going to go out to your website or click a donate button. There might be a longer tail where they think about it and they ruminate. Maybe they do other research on you. And then, maybe X number of months, weeks later, then they actually do something. And connecting those two activities from the seeing the bus to the actual donation is harder to do because it's not direct
very hard.
anymore. That's
Yes.
what I'm curious to know about.
Okay.
Where do you go with that?
That's super interesting. I love out of home campaigns. I've done projection mapping across New York City and London and billboards in Oslo, Taiwan. I mean, I think it's such a fascinating and fun medium to use, especially within the purpose driven world. It's not used as much, but it is harder to track. If that is your question, yes, it is definitely
Okay.
harder to track. I mean, you can put QR codes to your heart's content on everything, and maybe you'll get a few QR scans, and that's great to be able to visualize. But I mean, if it's on a moving bus, is the number, or a subway, I've done subway ads in New York. I mean, it is harder to calculate the return. Not saying you can't, because there are ways to do that. And if you work with out of home specific agencies in New York or whatever it might be, they will give you all these numbers of how many people walked past your ad estimate, and how many people estimated like sat next to your ad or possibly read it, or all these numbers. And those are great. I think it's a lot of understanding your goal. I'm not going to say that every single campaign is worth doing an out of home billboard for, because that's just not true. But if you're doing something that to make a statement or put butts in seats, I do think out of home advertising is amazing for nonprofit conferences and events. That stuff really tends to work. It really grabs attention. Not so much in Times Square, because most of those people don't live in New York and then won't be there for your event. But again, reading where your audience is. If your audience is always in this one area of New York, then maybe, a few billboards can help. But I think it's really, again, it goes back to understanding your goal, understanding what story you're trying to tell, and where the people you want to communicate that story to are, and where they live and work and breathe and get food and so on and so forth. But it is, I mean, yeah, it is, I'm not going to lie, it is much harder to understand if a campaign did well or not when you use a bus ad. That is really very heavily on awareness. And there's nothing wrong with awareness campaigns. I do suggest to my clients and everyone I speak to that you always have an awareness campaign is fine, but you always have a secondary goal. Because whatever it can be very small. It can be, again, I want 50 QR scans. I want 50 people to visit this website page that I put together, right? But there should always be a secondary goal, and you can format, and whatever consulting agency that you work with will help you format your goals and your messaging, right? Your everything that comes out in these bus ads, for example, should all lean and tell the same story in a way that communicates. Not this the same text that you put on a bus is not going to be the same that you put on a full billboard, right? Because it's less time to see. So I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but yes, you have to understand that you're not going to get 100 new newsletter subscribers from a billboard. That's a little unrealistic, but you might down the line, as you said, people can, now they know your name. They might have never heard about you before, but now they see your logo, they see your powerful ad on the bus going past, and they're like, whoa, like that's interesting. I mean, there's a reason people use it, and it works. It does work. I will say it works, and I love those campaigns. They can be extremely powerful, but they have to be done the right way, and you have to go into it understanding that you're not going to see immediate returns on them.
Being a techie, I'm always curious to see how AI influences various parts of the nonprofit world. I'm curious to know what have you seen in terms of AI influencing marketing for nonprofits?
Yeah, AI is definitely everywhere, and you have to be using some of it for sure. I think if you're not using anything, then definitely could be falling behind. I mean, there's so many different ways to use it, from organizational tools that I think are super helpful for nonprofits to the way you send your emails and so on and so forth. I think the one thing I would say be wary of is AI created marketing campaigns. Like asking ChatGPT to give you a marketing campaign, or analyze, I want, this is my goal, this is my location, give me a campaign. And I've seen some nonprofits do that, or AI generated graphics. Again, people want to donate and they want to help and support other people. If we're relying too heavily on AI generated graphics or campaigns, you miss the mark. You don't really, the AI doesn't fully, maybe it will in the future, but it currently does not know your audience as well as you do. And that, I think that's my message to all nonprofits. And AI can be super duper helpful on different aspects, but it should not be creating your creative campaigns for you. Your audience will notice, you will notice, your donors will notice, everyone will notice that it's not really you talking to them anymore. It's maybe ChatGPT talking to them, or whatever platform you're using. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want to say on the AI front, is that it's a great tool, but be wary of it.
There's a growing trend of something called AI slop, which is
Yes.
content generated by AI, pictures and
Mhm.
videos specifically. And it's just so generic. It's so,
You could
meaningless
tell.
and
Yeah.
non-personal and non-humane. There's a certain flatness to it that, and I'm sure it'll get better over time. But as we are in October, almost November 2025 here, it's not quite there. So ideas generation maybe, but make sure,
Yeah,
you invest it but not actual content itself. I would definitely.
exactly. Yeah, it can be very helpful, but don't use it for everything. Your mind is better than ChatGPT.
It still is. Yeah.
Yes.
And then leaning into the superhero theme of this show, I'm curious to know if you had a magic wand or some kind of superpower to be able to change something in nonprofit marketing, what would it be?
Oh man. I think the understanding of what it is, I think marketing in the nonprofit world is kind of misunderstood in a way. It's very underfunded, and that's I'm not sure how to change that. I can't answer fully that question, but if I could change one thing, if I could change one thing in the nonprofit world, is that I would give every small nonprofit marketing support. I think that'd be great. I think the world would just be so much better if every small, medium nonprofit out there that has never tried marketing before was given marketing support, and really an avenue to at least try it out, give something a go, run a large scale campaign, do an out of home, try talking to influencers, see if they can get an ambassador program going. I mean, there's so many different avenues that are so underutilized within the nonprofit world that I think can just do wonders for the space. So yeah, if I could change one thing, I would say that every small and medium sized nonprofit could have at least one marketing person on their team. I think that would be amazing to see.
I agree. Grace, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing this information. I was hoping that you could share your contact information so that if people have additional questions or they want to hire you for their marketing, they know how to contact you.
Yeah, definitely. You can find me, Grace Anna Douglas. It's Grace-Anna Douglas on LinkedIn. All of my work is on there. And then my website is gracefulmedia.co, not .com, .co, so .co. And yeah, my email is basically the same, grace@gracefulmedia.co if you guys want to reach out that way. Otherwise, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn, DM me, whatever. I'm always happy to have a conversation.
Grace, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for doing what you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.